The wind cut through Sarah's thin coat like a knife as she stood on the empty platform of Millfield Station. Christmas Eve, and the last train had been canceled due to the blizzard that was now painting the world white. Her breath formed small clouds in the bitter air, and she pulled her scarf tighter around her neck, though it did little to stop the cold from seeping into her bones. She had been traveling home to see her elderly mother for Christmas, carrying a small suitcase with carefully wrapped gifts and her mother's favorite cookies that she had spent all morning baking. The journey should have taken 3 hours, but now she found herself stranded 40 miles from anywhere with no money for a taxi and her phone battery dead. The station was nothing more than a concrete platform with a small shelter that offered little protection from the howling wind. The vending machine flickered weakly, its humming the only sound besides the storm. Sarah pressed herself against the back wall of the shelter, trying to find any corner that might block the wind. She thought about her mother, probably sitting by the window in her small apartment, watching for headlights that wouldn't come. They had planned to attend midnight mass together at the little church where Sarah had been baptized 26 years ago. It had become their tradition since her father passed away 3 years earlier. A tear froze on her cheek as she realized she might not make it home at all. The storm was getting worse, and the temperature was dropping fast. She had seen the weather reports that morning, but had foolishly thought she could beat the storm. Now she was paying for that mistake. Sarah pulled out her dead phone and stared at the black screen, wishing she had remembered to charge it before leaving. She had tried the emergency phone on the platform, but the line was dead. The station office was locked tight, with a sign saying the last attendant had left at 4 in the afternoon. She walked to the edge of the platform and looked down the tracks, hoping to see lights in the distance. Nothing but swirling snow and darkness stretched as far as she could see. The rails were already covered with a thick layer of white, and she knew no trains would be running until morning at the earliest. Back in the shelter, she sat on the cold metal bench and opened her suitcase to put on an extra sweater. The wrapped presents looked so cheerful with their red and green paper, but now they seemed to mock her situation. She had spent weeks finding the perfect gifts for her mother, including a photo album filled with pictures of their family through the years. The wind picked up again, and snow began blowing into the shelter despite its walls. Sarah moved to the farthest corner and curled up on the bench, using her suitcase as a windbreak. The metal was so cold it burned through her jeans, but she had no choice. She tried to stay positive by thinking about Christmas mornings when she was a child. Her father would make pancakes shaped like Christmas trees, while her mother played carols on the old piano. The house would smell like cinnamon and coffee, and they would open presents slowly, savoring each moment. But as the hours passed and the storm grew fiercer, those happy memories felt very far away. The cold was becoming dangerous now, and Sarah knew she couldn't stay on the platform much longer. Her fingers were numb despite her gloves, and she could no longer feel her toes. She stood up and walked around the small shelter, trying to get her blood moving. Each step sent pain shooting through her feet, and she realized she was in serious trouble. The nearest town was 5 miles away, and walking in this storm would be suicide. Sarah looked at her watch and saw it was almost 9 o'clock. Her mother would be starting to worry now. They had planned to have dinner at 7, and her mother always cooked enough food for an army, even when it was just the two of them. The shelter creaked and groaned under the force of the wind, and Sarah wondered if it would hold up through the night. She had heard stories of people being found frozen at bus stops and train stations, and she was starting to understand how that could happen. She opened her suitcase again and put on every piece of clothing she had packed, layering sweaters and even wrapping a summer dress around her legs like a blanket. It helped a little, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. As she sat there in the growing cold, Sarah began to pray. She wasn't particularly religious, but desperate times called for desperate measures. She asked for help, for warmth, for any way out of this nightmare. That's when she heard it, the distant sound of an engine cutting through the howl of the wind. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but the sound grew stronger. Sarah stumbled to her feet and looked out into the storm. Through the swirling snow, she could see lights approaching on the access road that led to the station. A vehicle was coming, moving slowly but steadily through the storm. Sarah's heart leaped with hope as she gathered her things and moved toward the edge of the shelter. The vehicle was a large pickup truck, dark-colored and powerful enough to handle the deep snow. It pulled up near the platform, and Sarah could see a figure inside, though she couldn't make out any details through the frosted windows. The engine idled for a moment, and Sarah held her breath, not daring to move. Then she heard a door slam, and footsteps crunched through the snow toward the platform. A tall figure emerged from the storm, wearing a heavy coat and cowboy hat. The man climbed the steps to the platform and walked toward the shelter where Sarah stood frozen, not from cold now, but from uncertainty. In the dim light, she could see he was older, maybe in his 50s, with a weathered face and kind eyes. He looked at her for a moment, taking in her desperate situation. The suitcase, the layers of clothing, the way she was shivering despite all her efforts to stay warm. Then he spoke, his voice low and gentle, barely audible over the storm. "Come into my home," he said simply. "You can't stay out here." Sarah stared at him, her mind racing. Every safety lesson she had ever learned told her not to go with strangers, especially not in the middle of nowhere during a storm. But as another gust of wind nearly knocked her over and she felt the dangerous cold penetrating deeper in her body, she realized she might not have a choice. The man seemed to understand her hesitation. He stepped back and pulled off his gloves, showing her his hands in a gesture of openness. "My name is William Harrison," he said. "I live about 2 miles from here. I was checking on my cattle when I saw the lights at the station and thought someone might be in trouble." Sarah looked into his eyes and saw only genuine concern. There was something about his manner, his quiet confidence, that made her feel this might be her only chance at survival. She made her decision. "Sarah," she said, her voice barely a whisper through her chattering teeth. "Sarah Mitchell. And yes, please. I need help." William nodded and picked up her suitcase without being asked. "My truck's warm," he said. "Let's get you out of this cold." As they walked through the snow toward his truck, Sarah felt a mixture of relief and nervousness. She was about to trust her life to a complete stranger, but what choice did she have? The storm was getting worse, and she knew she wouldn't survive the night on that platform. William opened the passenger door for her, and she climbed into the blessed warmth of the heated cab. The contrast was so sharp it almost hurt, and she began to cry as feeling returned to her fingers and toes. "You're safe now," William said as he got behind the wheel. "My wife Emma has hot soup on the stove, and we've got a warm bed for you tonight." As the truck pulled away from the station and into the storm, Sarah watched the empty platform disappear into the swirling snow. She had no idea what lay ahead, but for the first time in hours, she felt hope warming her frozen heart. The truck moved steadily through the storm, its headlights cutting through the swirling snow like beacons of hope. Sarah pressed her hands against the heating vents, feeling the blessed warmth flow over her numb fingers. William drove with calm confidence, his hands steady on the wheel as they navigated the treacherous road. "Been living out here for 32 years, he said, his voice gentle and reassuring. "Know these roads like the back of my hand, even in weather like this." He glanced at her with concern. "How long were you out there?" "Since about 6, Sarah replied, her teeth still chattering slightly. "The last train was canceled, and I couldn't find any other way home. My phone died, and I didn't know what else to do." William nodded thoughtfully. "Christmas Eve travel is always risky this time of year. We get storms like this every few years that shut everything down." He turned down a narrow road that Sarah hadn't even seen in the darkness. "Where were you trying to get to?" "Millbrook," she said. "To see my mother. We had plans for midnight mass, and she's probably worried sick by now." "Millbrook's about 40 miles from here," William said. "But don't worry about that tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you there safely." Sarah looked out the window and saw nothing but swirling white. She couldn't imagine how William could tell where he was going, but he seemed completely confident. The truck never wavered, and she began to relax for the first time since the storm had started. "Tell me about your mother," William said, and Sarah could hear genuine interest in his voice. "Her name is Helen," Sarah began, surprised at how good it felt to talk. "She's 73 and lives alone since my dad passed. She used to be a teacher, and she still volunteers at the library reading to children. She makes the best apple pie in 3 counties." William smiled. "Sounds like a wonderful woman. Emma would like her, I think. My wife loves to meet people who care about children and books." They drove in comfortable silence for a few more minutes, and then Sarah saw lights ahead. As they got closer, she could make out a large farmhouse with warm yellow light glowing from every window. There was a wraparound porch with Christmas decorations twinkling despite the storm, and smoke rising from a stone chimney. The house looked like something from a Christmas card, and Sarah felt her heart lift at the sight. William pulled up near the front steps and turned off the engine. "Welcome to Harrison Ranch," he said with pride in his voice. Before they could get out, the front door opened, and a woman appeared on the porch. She was about William's age, with silver hair pulled back in a neat bun and wearing a thick wool sweater. Even through the storm, Sarah could see the warmth in her smile. "Emma," William called out as he grabbed Sarah's suitcase from the truck bed. "We have a guest for Christmas Eve." Emma hurried down the steps despite the snow, reaching for Sarah's arm to help her up to the porch. "You poor dear," she said, her voice full of motherly concern. "You're frozen through. Come inside right now, and let's get you warmed up." The inside of the house was even more welcoming than the outside. A fire crackled in a large stone fireplace, and the air smelled like cinnamon and pine. Christmas decorations filled every corner, but they were tasteful and homey rather than overwhelming. A large Christmas tree stood in the front window, covered with what looked like decades' worth of family ornaments. "Sit right here by the fire," Emma insisted, guiding Sarah to a comfortable armchair positioned perfectly to catch the heat from the flames. "William, bring her suitcase upstairs to the blue room. I'll get some soup and hot chocolate." Sarah sank into the chair and felt tears of gratitude welling up in her eyes. The contrast between this warm, welcoming home and the cold platform where she had been trapped was almost overwhelming. She pulled off her wet gloves and held her hands toward the fire, feeling life returning to her fingers. Emma returned quickly with a steaming bowl of soup and a mug of hot chocolate topped with real whipped cream. "This is my grandmother's vegetable soup recipe," she said, setting the food on a small table beside Sarah's chair. "It'll warm you from the inside out." The soup was delicious, rich with beef and vegetables and seasoned perfectly. Sarah realized she hadn't eaten since early morning and was hungrier than she had thought. The hot chocolate was even better, creamy and sweet with just a hint of cinnamon. "Thank you," Sarah said between spoonfuls. "I can't tell you how grateful I am. I was starting to think I might not make it through the night." Emma settled into the chair across from her, a concerned expression on her kind face. "Well, you don't have to worry about that now. You're safe and warm, and that's what matters." William came back downstairs and joined them by the fire, settling into his own well-worn recliner. "Roads are getting worse," he reported. "Good thing we found you when we did." "How did you know to look for me?" Sarah asked. "I didn't exactly," William admitted. "I was out checking on the cattle before the storm got too bad, and I saw lights at the station when I was driving back. Figured someone might be stranded there. Happens sometimes when the trains get canceled." Sarah shook her head in amazement. "What are the odds? If you hadn't been checking on your cattle, I would have been stuck there all night." "Sometimes things just work out the way they're supposed to," Emma said gently. "God has a way of putting people where they need to be." Sarah looked around the warm, comfortable room and had to agree. Everything about this place felt safe and peaceful. Family photos covered the mantel above the fireplace, showing William and Emma at various ages, along with what looked like children and grandchildren. "Do you have family nearby?" Sarah asked. Emma's face lit up. 3 children and 7 grandchildren, she said proudly. They're all coming tomorrow for Christmas dinner. Well, if the road's clear enough for them to make it. They'll make it, William said confidently. The county will have the main roads plowed by morning, and our kids are determined when it comes to Christmas dinner. Sarah finished her soup and felt warmth spreading through her entire body. The combination of the food, the fire, and the genuine kindness of these strangers was almost overwhelming. She had been rescued not just from the cold, but welcomed into what felt like a family. I should try to call my mother, she said suddenly. She must be worried sick. Of course, Emma said, pointing to an old-fashioned telephone on a side table. Please call her right away. Sarah dialed her mother's number with shaking hands. The phone rang twice before her mother's anxious voice answered. Sarah? Sarah, is that you? Yes, Mom, it's me, Sarah said, tears flowing freely now. I'm safe. I got stranded at a train station, but some wonderful people took me in for the night. Oh, thank God, her mother said, and Sarah could hear her crying too. I've been so worried. The news said there were blizzards all along the train route. I'm fine, Sarah assured her. I'm staying with the Harrison family on their ranch, and they're taking wonderful care of me. I'll try to get home tomorrow, but it might be Christmas Day before I can make it. Don't you dare try to travel in this storm, her mother said firmly. I'm just grateful you're safe and warm. Stay where you are until it's safe to travel. After they hung up, Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders. Her mother was relieved, and Sarah was truly safe. She looked at William and Emma, who had been quietly waiting while she made her call. Thank you for letting me call her, she said. She was so worried. Any mother would be, Emma said. I'm just glad we could help ease her mind. They talked for another hour, sharing stories and getting to know each other. Sarah learned that William had inherited the ranch from his father and had been raising cattle and horses there his entire adult life. Emma had been a nurse before retiring, and they had met when William was thrown from a horse and ended up in her emergency room. 35 years ago this spring, William said with a grin. Best accident I ever had. Emma laughed and playfully swatted his arm. He was the most stubborn patient I ever had. Tried to leave before the doctor cleared him. Couldn't help it, William said. I was smitten. Sarah felt her heart warm at their obvious devotion to each other. They were the kind of couple she had always hoped to find for herself someday, still obviously in love after decades together. As the evening grew later, Emma showed Sarah to her room upstairs. It was decorated in soft blues and whites with a comfortable queen bed covered in handmade quilts and a window that looked out over the ranch. Even through the storm, Sarah could see the outline of barns and fences. There are extra blankets in the closet if you need them, Emma said, and the bathroom is right across the hall. Please make yourself at home. I don't know how to thank you, Sarah said. You've saved my life tonight. Emma smiled and gave her a gentle hug. Sometimes we're all just angels for each other, she said. Sleep well, dear. After Emma left, Sarah changed into her nightgown and sat on the edge of the bed, looking out at the storm. The wind was still howling, and snow continued to fall heavily. She thought about how different this night could have ended if William hadn't decided to check on his cattle. She knelt beside the bed and said a prayer of gratitude for her rescue and for the kindness of strangers who had become so much more. Then she crawled under the warm quilts and fell into the deepest sleep she'd had in months, safe and secure in the home of angels who had appeared when she needed them most. Sarah woke to the smell of bacon and coffee drifting up from the kitchen below. For a moment, she was confused about where she was, but then the memories of the previous night came flooding back. The storm, the cold platform, and William's gentle voice saying, "Come into my home." She looked out the window and gasped at the transformation outside. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world covered in pristine white snow. The sun was shining brilliantly, making the snow sparkle like millions of diamonds. The ranch looked even more beautiful in daylight, with red barns and neat fences creating a picture-perfect winter scene. She could hear voices and laughter downstairs, more than just William and Emma. Their family must have arrived for Christmas morning. Sarah felt a moment of awkwardness, realizing she was about to intrude on a family Christmas. But then she remembered Emma's words about angels for each other. After dressing quickly, Sarah made her way downstairs carrying her suitcase. The kitchen was full of people of various ages, all talking and laughing while Emma bustled around cooking what looked like enough food for an army. William was at the stove making pancakes while a young woman set the long dining room table. "Sarah," Emma called out when she spotted her. "Come meet the family. Everyone, this is Sarah, our Christmas angel." A chorus of warm greetings filled the kitchen. There was Michael, William, and Emma's eldest son, with his wife Jennifer and their 2 teenage children. David, the middle son, had brought his wife Lisa and their 3 young children, including twin boys who looked about 8 years old. The youngest child was Rebecca, William, and Emma's daughter, who had driven up from the city with her husband Mark. "We heard about your adventure last night," Rebecca said, giving Sarah a warm hug. "Dad told us how he found you at the station. You must have been terrified." "I was," Sarah admitted. "But your parents saved me. I don't know what would have happened if they hadn't come along." "Dad's always been like that," Michael said with obvious pride. "He can't pass by anyone who needs help. Mom either. They've taken in stranded travelers, helped neighbors through tough times, you name it." "That's just what you do," William said simply, flipping pancakes with practiced ease. "Help people when they need it." The twins, Jake and Josh, were fascinated by Sarah's story and peppered her with questions about the storm and what it felt like to be stranded. Their little sister, Amy, who was about 5, shyly offered to share her stuffed reindeer with Sarah in case she was still cold. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart," Sarah said, accepting the little toy. "What's his name?" "Rudy," Amy said solemnly. "He keeps me warm when I'm scared." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes at the child's innocent generosity. This entire family seemed to have hearts as big as their ranch. Breakfast was a loud, joyful affair, with everyone talking at once, sharing stories, and catching up on news. Sarah found herself drawn into the conversation, as if she had always been part of the family. They asked about her work as a graphic designer, her travels, and especially about her mother. "She sounds like a wonderful woman," Jennifer said after Sarah shared some stories about Helen's volunteer work. "You must be anxious to get to her." "I am," Sarah said. "But she told me last night to stay put until the roads were safe. She was just grateful I found help." "Smart woman," David said. "The interstate's still closed, but Dad thinks the back roads might be passable by this afternoon." "No rush," William said firmly. "Safety first. Besides, it's Christmas morning. No one should have to travel on Christmas morning unless it's an emergency." After breakfast, the family gathered in the living room to exchange gifts. Sarah felt awkward being there without anything to give, but Emma waved away her concerns. "Your presence is gift enough," she said. "You've given us the chance to help someone, and that's what Christmas is really about." Sarah watched as the family exchanged thoughtful, often homemade gifts. There were hand-knitted scarves, photo albums full of memories, wooden toys that William had crafted for the grandchildren, and preserves that Emma had canned from their garden. When it came time for the children's gifts, little Amy suddenly ran to Sarah and pressed a small wrapped package into her hands. "This is for you," she said shyly. "Oh, sweetie, you didn't need to give me anything," Sarah protested, but Emma encouraged her to open it. Inside was a small wooden angel, beautifully carved and painted in soft colors. "Grandpa made it," Amy explained. "But I want you to have it because you're our Christmas angel." Sarah couldn't speak for a moment, overwhelmed by the little girl's generosity. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received," she finally managed to say, giving Amy a big hug. "Wait here," Sarah said suddenly, and ran upstairs to get her suitcase. She came back down with the wrapped gifts she had been bringing to her mother. "Mom would want me to share these," she said, distributing the cookies she had baked to everyone. There were also small ornaments she had made herself, and she insisted that Amy take the special snow globe she had bought for her mother. "Are you sure?" Amy asked, her eyes wide as she shook the globe and watched the snow swirl around the tiny village inside. "Positive," Sarah said. "You've given me something much more precious." The morning flew by with games, stories, and more food than Sarah had seen in years. The older children taught her a card game, while the adults shared memories of Christmases past. William played guitar and led them all in singing carols, and Emma brought out photo albums that chronicled decades of family holidays. Around noon, William went outside to check the roads and came back with good news. "Main highway's open now," he reported. "Plows have been through, and the sun's melting things pretty quickly." Sarah felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She was anxious to get to her mother, but she had grown attached to this wonderful family in just one day. They had made her feel more welcome than some people she had known for years. "I should call Mom and let her know I can travel now," she said. But when she called, her mother had a surprise. "Actually, sweetheart, I've been thinking. Why don't you invite your rescuers to come here for dinner? I've got enough food for an army, and I'd love to meet the people who saved my daughter." Sarah looked around at the Harrison family, all of whom had heard the conversation. "What do you think?" she asked. "Would you like to meet my mother? She's an incredible cook, and she'd love to thank you in person." Emma's face lit up. "We'd be honored," she said, "but only if we can bring dessert. I made 3 pies yesterday." The afternoon became a convoy as both families prepared for the journey to Millbrook. William loaded Emma's pies into his truck while Sarah rode with Rebecca and Mark, who had offered to drive her so she wouldn't have to take a bus or train. The roads were indeed much better, and they made good time to Millbrook. Sarah's heart lifted as they pulled into the familiar neighborhood where she had grown up. Her mother's little house looked warm and welcoming, with Christmas lights twinkling around the windows. Helen came out to greet them before they could even get to the door, wrapping Sarah in a fierce hug before turning to welcome the Harrison family. She was exactly as Sarah had described her, a small, energetic woman with silver hair and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and warmth. "You must be William," she said, taking his hands in both of hers. "I can never thank you enough for what you did for my Sarah." "No thanks needed," William replied. "We were just glad to help." Helen insisted on giving everyone a tour of her house, showing off the photos and mementos that told the story of Sarah's life. The Harrison grandchildren were fascinated by the pictures of Sarah as a little girl, and Amy particularly loved the photo of Sarah with a missing front tooth, grinning beside a huge Christmas tree. Dinner was everything Helen had promised, and more. She had prepared a traditional Christmas feast with all the trimmings, and Emma's pies provided the perfect ending to the meal. The two families mingled as if they had known each other for years, sharing stories and discovering surprising connections. It turned out that Helen and Emma had both taught at schools in the same district, though at different times, and they knew many of the same people. William and Helen bonded over their love of old country music, and soon they were singing harmony on songs from their youth. As the evening wound down, Sarah realized this had turned into one of the most memorable Christmases of her life. What had started as a disaster had become a celebration of human kindness and the true spirit of the season. "We should exchange addresses," Emma suggested as they were preparing to leave. "I don't want to lose touch with you wonderful people." "Agreed," Helen said firmly. "And you must all come back this summer. I want to see this famous ranch of yours." As they said their goodbyes, little Amy ran up to Sarah one more time. "Will you visit us too?" she asked hopefully. "Try and stop me," Sarah promised, giving the little girl another hug. Standing on her mother's porch, watching the Harrison family drive away into the starlit night, Sarah fingered the wooden angel Amy had given her. She thought about how quickly life could change, how strangers could become family, and how sometimes the worst situations led to the most beautiful discoveries. "Ready for midnight mass?" her mother asked, linking arms with her daughter. "Ready," Sarah said, and meant it. She had so much to be grateful for this Christmas Eve, and She wanted to share that gratitude in the little church where her journey of faith had begun so many years ago. The small church was lit entirely by candles for the midnight service, creating a warm, golden glow that made every face look peaceful and holy. Sarah and her mother sat in their traditional pew near the front, the same place they had sat together since Sarah was a little girl. The familiar surroundings felt different tonight, though, charged with new meaning after everything Sarah had experienced. As the congregation sang Silent Night, Sarah thought about the silence of the storm the night before and how it had brought such unexpected blessings into her life. She looked down at the wooden angel Amy had given her, which she carried in her coat pocket, and smiled at the memory of the little girl's generous heart. The pastor's sermon that night was about angels appearing to ordinary people, and Sarah had to suppress a smile. If he only knew about the angels who lived on Harrison Ranch and the Christmas miracle that had unfolded in the past 24 hours. After the service, several neighbors and old family friends stopped to welcome Sarah home and wish them both a Merry Christmas. Mrs. Patterson from next door had heard about Sarah's adventure from Helen and wanted to hear the whole story firsthand. "It sounds like something from a movie," she marveled. "The chances of that rancher being out in the storm just when you needed help must have been 1 in a million. Maybe some things are just meant to be," Sarah replied, echoing Emma's words from the night before. Walking home under the starry sky, Sarah and her mother talked quietly about the events of the past day. Helen was particularly interested in hearing about Emma and the way the Harrison family had welcomed Sarah so completely. "She sounds like someone I would really enjoy knowing," Helen said. "It's been a long time since I've met people who still understand what hospitality really means." "They're incredible," Sarah agreed. "The whole family is like that. Even the little ones have hearts bigger than most adults I know." The next few days passed quickly in a blur of Christmas activities. Sarah and her mother cooked together, took long walks through the snowy neighborhood, and spent hours looking through old photo albums and sharing memories. But Sarah found herself thinking often about the Harrison Ranch and the family who had taken her in. On the day after Christmas, her phone rang. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but when she answered, she heard Amy's excited voice. "Sarah, it's me, Amy. Grandma Emma taught me how to use the phone to call you." "Amy," Sarah exclaimed, her heart warming at the sound of the little girl's voice. "How are you, sweetheart? Did you have a good Christmas?" "The best ever," Amy said enthusiastically. "But I missed you. Are you coming to visit us soon like you promised?" Emma came on the line then, apologizing for Amy's impatience. "She's been asking about you constantly since we got home," she explained. "I hope you don't mind her calling." "I don't mind at all," Sarah assured her. "It's wonderful to hear from you. How is everyone?" They talked for nearly an hour, with different family members taking turns on the phone to share their post-Christmas news. William had received a new guitar for Christmas and was learning to play some of the songs he and Helen had sung together. The twins had built an elaborate snow fort and wanted to show it to Sarah when she visited. Rebecca had gotten engaged on Christmas Day and was excitedly planning a summer wedding. "You have to come to the wedding," Rebecca insisted when she got on the phone. "I know we just met, but you feel like family now." After they hung up, Sarah realized that the connection she felt to the Harrison family wasn't fading with time. If anything, it was getting stronger. She had made real friends, the kind of people who would be part of her life for years to come. 3 days later, another surprise came in the mail. It was a package from Emma containing homemade cookies, a jar of her famous apple butter, and a letter written in elegant handwriting. "Dear Sarah," the letter began, "I hope you and your mother are having a wonderful week together. William and I have been talking, and we would love to extend a formal invitation for you both to come stay with us for a long weekend this summer. We could show you the ranch in good weather, and I know Helen would love the peace and quiet of country life. The guest room is always ready, and we would be honored to have you both as part of our family gathering. Amy asks about you every day, and the boys want to teach you to ride horses. Even the teenagers have been talking about the cool lady who got stranded in the storm. You've touched all of our hearts, dear one. and we hope this is just the beginning of a long friendship. Please give our love to your mother, and know that you both are in our prayers always. Love, Emma. Sarah shared the letter with her mother over lunch, and Helen's eyes lit up as she read it. What a gracious woman, Helen said. And what a wonderful invitation. I would love to see their ranch and meet Emma in person. When can we go? They began planning immediately, looking at calendars and talking about the best time for a visit. Sarah realized she had vacation days saved up and could easily take a long weekend in the spring or summer. That evening, as they were cleaning up after dinner, Helen surprised Sarah with something she had been working on. I've been thinking about your new friends, Helen said, pulling a wrapped package from behind the kitchen counter. And I made something for little Amy. Inside the package was a beautiful hand-knitted sweater in soft pink yarn, sized perfectly for a 5-year-old girl. Helen had embroidered tiny flowers around the collar and cuffs, and it was clearly a labor of love. Mom, this is beautiful, Sarah breathed, holding up the sweater. Amy is going to love this. I also made something for Emma, Helen continued, producing another package. This one contained a set of hand-embroidered dish towels with a matching apron. I know she likes to cook, and every good cook needs pretty kitchen linens. Sarah hugged her mother tightly. You're amazing, you know that. The Harrison family is going to love you. I already love them, Helen replied simply. Anyone who would take my daughter the way they did has my heart forever. New Year's Eve found Sarah back in the city, preparing to return to work after the holiday break. But her apartment felt different now, somehow smaller and lonelier than it had before her Christmas adventure. She found herself looking often at the photos on her phone from Christmas Day at her mother's house, especially the ones of the two families together. She had put Amy's wooden angel on her dresser where she could see it every morning when she woke up. It served as a daily reminder of the unexpected blessings that could come from the most difficult circumstances. At work, her colleagues were fascinated by her Christmas story. Her best friend and co-worker, Janet, was particularly intrigued by the description of the Harrison family. It sounds like you found your people, Janet observed over lunch one day. I've never seen you light up the way you do when you talk about them. They really are special, Sarah agreed. I feel like I've known them my whole life, even though it's only been a week. Are you really going to visit them this summer? Absolutely, Mom, and are already planning it. Emma invited us to stay for Rebecca's wedding too. Janet shook her head in amazement. A week ago you were strangers, and now you're invited to family weddings. That's either the best Christmas miracle I've ever heard of, or you're the luckiest person alive. Maybe both, Sarah said, smiling as she thought about Amy's shy smile and William's gentle kindness. That weekend, Sarah drove back to Millbrook to spend some time with her mother and to help her prepare packages for the Harrison family. They carefully wrapped Helen's handmade gifts and included some of her famous chocolate chip cookies and a bottle of the elderberry wine she made from berries in her own backyard. I want to include a letter, Helen said as they were packing the box. I need to thank them properly for what they did. Helen's letter was heartfelt and beautiful, expressing gratitude not just for saving Sarah from the storm, but for showing such kindness to a stranger and for reminding them both that there were still good people in the world who lived by the values of compassion and generosity. Your act of kindness has changed both of our lives, Helen wrote. Sarah has always been a loving daughter, but I can see a new peace in her eyes since Christmas Eve. You didn't just save her from the cold. You restored her faith in human goodness. That is a gift beyond measure. As they prepared to mail the package, Sarah realized that her mother was right. Something fundamental had shifted in her worldview since that night at the train station. She felt more connected to the world around her, more aware of the possibilities for goodness and grace that existed in everyday life. The Harrison family called the day they received the package, with everyone taking turns to thank Helen for her beautiful gifts. Amy was especially excited about the pink sweater and insisted on wearing it immediately, even though it was too big for her small frame. I'm going to wear it every day until summer when you come visit, Amy announced over the phone, making both Sarah and Helen laugh. We can't wait to see you in it, Sarah promised. And to see your snow fort, and to meet your horses, and to have one of Grandma Emma's famous dinners. As winter slowly gave way to spring, Sarah and Helen maintained regular contact with the Harrison family. They exchanged letters, phone calls, and emails, sharing news of their daily lives and planning for the summer visit. William sent pictures of the ranch as it came alive in spring, with new calves in the pasture and wildflowers blooming across the meadows. Emma shared recipes and gardening tips with Helen, and they discovered they both had a passion for growing heirloom tomatoes. The children sent artwork and school papers, and Rebecca kept them updated on her wedding plans. She had decided to have the ceremony right there on the ranch, under the big oak tree where her parents had been married 35 years earlier. It just feels right to have it at home, Rebecca explained in one of her letters. And we would be honored if you and Sarah would be our special guests. Sarah realized that she was no longer just looking forward to a vacation visit. She was anticipating a homecoming to a place that had claimed her heart on the coldest night of the year, with people who had become family in the space of a single day. The late June morning was perfect for travel as Sarah and Helen loaded their suitcases into Sarah's car for the drive to Harrison Ranch. The sun was shining. The temperature was warm but not hot, and both women felt the excitement of a long-anticipated reunion with people who had become dear friends. I can't believe it's been 6 months since that Christmas Eve, Sarah said as they pulled out of Helen's driveway. It feels like yesterday and forever ago all at the same time. I keep thinking about how different things might have been if William hadn't decided to check on his cattle that night, Helen replied, settling back in her seat with the cooler full of homemade treats she was bringing for the Harrison family. Divine providence, that's what I call it. The drive to the ranch took them through beautiful countryside, rolling hills green with summer crops and pastures dotted with grazing cattle. Sarah found herself getting more excited with each mile, remembering the warmth and love that had surrounded her during the darkest moment of her year. When they finally turned down the familiar gravel road leading to the ranch, Sarah felt her heart lift at the sight of the sprawling farmhouse with its wraparound porch and flower gardens blooming in full summer glory. The barn was a bright red in the afternoon sunlight, and she could see horses grazing peacefully in the nearby pasture. Before they could even get out of the car, the front door burst open and Amy came running across the yard, wearing the pink sweater Helen had made for her despite the warm weather. Behind her came the rest of the family, all talking and laughing as they surrounded the car. "Sarah, Mrs. Helen," Amy called out, launching herself into Sarah's arms for a fierce hug. "You're really here." "We're really here," Sarah confirmed, holding the little girl tight. Amy had grown noticeably in the past 6 months, but her smile was exactly the same. William and Emma were right behind Amy, both beaming with joy at seeing their Christmas guests again. William enveloped Sarah in a warm hug while Emma embraced Helen like an old friend. "Welcome home," Emma said simply, and Sarah felt tears spring to her eyes at the words. This did feel like home, more than anywhere else she had been in recent years. The twins, Jake and Josh, were eager to show off how much they had grown and all the improvements that had been made to their snow fort location, which was now an elaborate treehouse. The older grandchildren had come for the weekend specifically to see Sarah and Helen again, and Rebecca was glowing with happiness as her wedding day approached. "The treehouse is amazing," Sarah said as the boys dragged her around to the backyard to see their construction project. "Did you build all of this yourselves?" "Grandpa helped," Jake admitted, "but we did most of the work. Wait until you see the rope ladder and the pulley system for bringing snacks up," Josh added importantly. Helen was already deep in conversation with Emma about the garden, which was magnificent in full summer bloom. Rows of vegetables stretched toward the barn, and flower beds created splashes of color all around the house. "I've never seen tomatoes like these," Helen marveled, examining the heavy clusters of fruit on Emma's heirloom plants. "You must share your secrets with me." "All weekend long," Emma promised. "And I want to learn about your elderberry wine." We have wild elderberries down by the creek that I've never known what to do with. As the afternoon wore on, Sarah found herself slipping back into the comfortable rhythm of Harrison family life as if she had never left. She helped Emma prepare dinner while Helen was recruited by William to help him tune his new guitar. The children alternately demanded her attention and entertained her with demonstrations of various skills they had acquired since Christmas. Dinner was a celebration, with Emma having prepared all of Sarah's favorite dishes from their Christmas feast. The conversation flowed as easily as it had 6 months earlier, picking up threads of friendship as if no time had passed at all. "Tell us about your work," Michael asked as they lingered over Emma's famous apple pie. "Are you still doing graphic design?" "I am," Sarah replied, "but I've been thinking about some changes. Actually, your family has inspired me to consider something different." She had been thinking about this for months, but hadn't spoken the words aloud until now. "I've been considering starting my own business, maybe moving somewhere with a slower pace of life. The city doesn't feel like home anymore." "What kind of business?" Rebecca asked with interest. "Freelance design work, but also maybe some writing. I've been working on a book about the power of human kindness, inspired by what happened to me at Christmas." William looked pleased. "That sounds like something the world needs more of. Have you thought about where you might want to relocate?" Emma asked casually, but Sarah caught the hopeful note in her voice. "Actually, I have," Sarah said, smiling around the table at these people who had changed her life. "I've been thinking about this area. It's beautiful, peaceful, and I already have friends here." Amy clapped her hands together excitedly. "You could live near us forever." "Well, I don't know about forever," Sarah laughed, "but I've been looking at some properties online. There's a little house about 10 miles from here that's for sale. It has land for a garden and enough space for a home office." The excitement around the table was palpable. Helen looked surprised, but pleased, and the Harrison family began talking all at once about the possibilities. "You could help me with the wedding decorations," Rebecca exclaimed. "And teach us about graphic design," the twins added. "You could come to all our family dinners," Emma said, her eyes bright with happiness. That evening, as they sat on the front porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Sarah felt a deep sense of rightness about her decision. She hadn't planned to announce it during this visit, but being here again had confirmed what her heart had been telling her for months. "Are you really serious about moving here?" Helen asked quietly as they rocked gently on the porch swing. "I think I am, Mom. I know it would mean being farther from you, but this is where your heart is," Helen finished for her. "I can see it, sweetheart. You belong here with these people, and it's not that far. I could come visit often, and maybe even spend parts of the winter here when the weather gets bad in Millbrook." Emma overheard and immediately jumped into the conversation. "Helen, you would be welcome here anytime, for as long as you want to stay. We have plenty of room, and I would love the company." The next morning, William surprised everyone by announcing that he would like to drive Sarah and Helen to see the house that was for sale. "I know the owners," he explained. "Good people, and they've taken excellent care of the place. If you're serious about this, we should take a look." The house was even better than the online photos had suggested. It was a charming 2-story farmhouse with original hardwood floors, a big country kitchen, and windows that looked out over rolling meadows. The property included a small barn that would be perfect for storage and a creek that ran along the back boundary. "The kitchen is big enough for serious cooking," Emma observed, already envisioning holiday gatherings there. "And this room would make a perfect office," Helen added, standing in a sunny front bedroom with built-in bookcases. Sarah walked through the house slowly, imagining herself living there, working on her book at the kitchen table in the morning sunlight, hosting dinner parties for the Harrison family, maybe even having her mother come for extended visits. "What do you think?" William asked as they stood in the backyard, looking out over the peaceful landscape. "I think it's perfect," Sarah said simply. "I think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be." The rest of their visit was spent in a whirlwind of activity. Sarah called a realtor and arranged to make an offer on the house. Helen helped Emma can vegetables from the garden and learn the secrets of elderberry wine making. The children treated both women to horseback riding lessons and elaborate picnics down by the creek. Rebecca's wedding preparations were in full swing, and Sarah found herself naturally falling into the role of helping with decorations and planning. Her design background was invaluable in creating elegant yet rustic touches that perfectly suited a ranch wedding. "I can't believe how perfectly everything is falling into place," Rebecca said, as they hung strings of lights in the oak tree where she would be married. "It's like you were meant to be here for this." "Maybe I was," Sarah replied, stepping back to admire their work. The tree looked magical, with hundreds of tiny lights twinkling among the leaves. On their last evening at the ranch, the entire extended Harrison family gathered for a barbecue in Sarah's and Helen's honor. Cousins and aunts and uncles who had heard the story of the Christmas Eve rescue came to meet the women who had become part of their family. As the evening wound down and children were collected for the drive back to town, Amy approached Sarah with a serious expression on her small face. "Are you really going to move here?" she asked, clutching the wooden angel that had traveled back and forth between them several times as a symbol of their friendship. "I'm going to try," Sarah promised. "The people who own the house have to agree to sell it to me first, but I hope so. I've been praying every night that you would," Amy confided. "Grandma Emma says prayers help things happen the way they're supposed to." "Grandma Emma is a very wise woman," Sarah said, giving Amy a hug. "And I think your prayers are working." The drive home the next day was bittersweet. Helen and Sarah were both sad to leave the ranch and their friends, but excited about the possibilities that lay ahead. Sarah's offer on the house had been accepted, and if everything went smoothly with inspections and financing, she could be moved in by autumn. "You know," Helen said as they drove through the countryside, "I think that train cancellation was the best thing that ever happened to you." "One of the best things," Sarah agreed, thinking about all the changes that had flowed from that cold, frightening night at the station. "But the best thing was discovering that there are still people in the world like the Harrisons, people who open their homes and hearts to strangers without expecting anything in return. And now you're not strangers anymore," Helen pointed out. "You're family." 3 months later, Sarah stood in the kitchen of her new home, unpacking boxes while Emma arranged flowers in a vase on the windowsill. Through the window, she could see William helping her father move furniture while the Harrison grandchildren ran around the yard with her mother, who was visiting for the housewarming. Rebecca's wedding had been everything she had dreamed of, and Sarah had been honored to be included as one of the family. Now she was officially a neighbor, living just down the road from the people who had saved her life and changed her heart. Her book was nearly finished, and she had already received interest from a publisher who wanted to feature it as an inspirational memoir about the power of human kindness. Her design business was thriving with clients all over the region, and she had never been happier or more at peace. That evening, as the last of the moving day helpers headed home, and Sarah sat on her front porch with a cup of coffee, Amy came running across the meadow that separated the two properties. "Sarah," she called out, scrambling up the porch steps, "look what I brought you." In her hands was a small potted plant, carefully transplanted from Emma's garden. "It's a rose bush," Amy explained importantly. "Grandma Emma says it will bloom every year and remind you of the day you came home to stay." Sarah accepted the plant with tears in her eyes, remembering another gift from this special little girl on a Christmas morning that felt like a lifetime ago. The wooden angel sat on her kitchen windowsill now, the first thing she saw each morning when she woke up in her new life. "Thank you, sweetheart," Sarah said, hugging Amy tight. "It's perfect." As Amy skipped back across the meadow in the golden light of sunset, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. A canceled train, a terrifying storm, and a stranger's kindness had led her to this place of belonging and peace. She looked up at the first stars appearing in the clear country sky and whispered a prayer of gratitude for the angels who appear when we need them most, for the families who welcome strangers as their own, and for the unexpected paths that lead us home to where we were always meant to be. In the distance, she could hear laughter from the Harrison ranch, and knew that her new life was filled with the greatest gift of all, a family who had chosen her, and a place where she truly belonged.